Higher ed is being drafted into America's AI strategy, whether it's ready or not.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your no-fluff guide to artificial intelligence in higher ed. I'm Mallory Willsea, bringing nearly 20 years of edtech and marketing expertise straight to your earbuds. Higher ed leaders are expected to master AI overnight, but let's be real, no one has time to sift through every headline, hot take, or research report. That's why every Monday, I'll break down what actually matters. Fast, clear, and to the point. Want to sound like the smartest person in the room at your next team meeting? You're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Higher Ed Pulse. On today's episode, higher ed is being drafted into America's AI strategy, whether it's ready or not. This spring, 2 executive orders reshaped the playing field. In April, President Trump called on colleges to help build an AI-ready workforce. Then in June, a follow-up executive order on cybersecurity made one thing clear. Campuses aren't just educators, they're digital infrastructure the government expects to protect. As AI adoption accelerates and bipartisan pressure mounts, what role should colleges really play? Well, joining me today to answer that question is Brad Carson, president of Americans for Responsible Innovation, a nonprofit advocating for smart guardrails around emerging technologies like AI. For the past 4 years, Brad served as president of the University of Tulsa, where he grew enrollment, launched new academic programs, and led the nation in National Merit Scholars per capita. But his resume goes far beyond campus. Brad served 2 terms in Congress, deployed to Iraq as an intelligence officer, and was later appointed by President Obama as the acting Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. Brad brings this rare cross-sector perspective to the AI conversation that spans higher ed, national security, and public policy. And today he's going to help us unpack what America's evolving AI agenda really means for higher education. So Brad, welcome to the Pulse. Congratulations on your retirement from the University of Tulsa. And now I saw in your public message, you noted that part of the reason for this decision is because you believe AI is a very important issue, maybe the most important one confronting our world, and you want to help ensure that the development remains grounded in human dignity and safety. Can you expand on that a little bit more and why that led to your decision to leave as president of the University of Tulsa?
Well, thanks so much for having me on. And it's really exciting to talk about what I think is going to be a transformation for education as well as our broader society. And so I loved leading a university, working directly with young people, trying to transform their lives, fostering intellectual environment on campus. It's an extraordinary opportunity as well as responsibility. But looking forward, I can already see how AI, which I've been interested in for more than a decade now, really coming from my time at the Pentagon, AI is going to transform the world in very serious ways. I don't think education is grappling with it. I don't think our broader society is grappling with it yet. And so for me, it's a chance to get involved in working with an organization that has already kind of become a leading organization in the space to advocate for saying, like, here's how we think this should go. Here's how we think members of Congress should think about it, how citizens should think about it as it becomes a voting issue for people. You know, they recognize that this is going to change their workplace. It could actually automate their job. It will certainly change the nature of their job. It will change the way we interact with media, as increasingly a lot of the things we watch or hear are not necessarily generated by human beings. And so this is going to be one of the profound changes in human culture and so it's a chance for me to really get engaged in what I think is going to be something that's very, very important. And to stay involved in higher education in the sense that AI has a major use case in how we educate young people, both K through 12 and in college, and to try to talk to colleges about how they can use AI or think about the problem in a better way.
Wow, you just, I think, packed the last 2 months of topics from Higher Ed Pulse episodes into about 90 seconds. And I will use this opportunity as a call to action for new listeners. Subscribe to this podcast and head back and listen to some of those episodes. Brad just mentioned things like how we interact with media, the changing workplace and the changing nature of our jobs, and also how this is just going to impact our day-to-day and our culture. And those are all things that we've been talking about. So Brad, the timing for you to join this podcast, I think, is just perfect. So listeners, let's get into today's topic. This year, the federal government made its expectations clear. Colleges and universities aren't just participants in the AI era, they're part of the national response strategy. In April, the president signed an EO tasking higher ed with building an AI-ready workforce. It called for an expansion of AI, STEM, and cybersecurity programs and urged deeper partnerships between institutions, government, and industry to accelerate talent pipelines. And I had John Career on the podcast just a couple months ago to talk about this exact executive order. Now, fast forward to June. A second executive order reframed campuses as critical digital infrastructure. It laid out new expectations for cybersecurity readiness, supply chain protections, and breach reporting, specifically citing university networks connected to federal systems. So when you put these two together, these orders really shift the ground under our industry. First of all, colleges are being treated like frontline players in national AI strategy. Second, institutions that lag behind could face operational and reputational risk. And of course, third, the pressure is coming from both sides of the aisle. So for institutions that are already balancing enrollment headwinds, budget stress, and digital disruption, I'm sure things, Brad, you are well aware of given your previous employer. The ask here is really significant for a college or a university, and it raises this bigger question around what role higher ed should be playing in preparing the country for an AI-powered future. So, Brad, as we've covered, you've spent time in Congress, the Pentagon, and most recently at the University of Tulsa. So when you look at the direction that these executive orders are pointing us, what do you think they actually signal about how Washington sees higher ed's role in the age of AI? And leaders who are listening to this podcast, what do they need to be paying attention to that maybe isn't making the news headlines?
Well, I think the EOs show you that the Trump administration does believe higher education has a key role to play in the future, but also that there are risks that higher education brings to the system through cybersecurity and the fact that we hold, lots of personally identifying information, sensitive information about families and students. So on the cyber issue, I saw this firsthand at the University of Tulsa. Good cybersecurity. We have an amazing academic program in cybersecurity. We have a lot of faculty experts, as well as our IT department is seized with the issue. It's very expensive. And at a time when many universities are finding their margins dwindling, as you mentioned, declining enrollment, the birth dearth hitting us here in 2026, tuition discounting only increasing. Right? For lots of universities, adequate cybersecurity is not an easy thing to have. And you've seen this over the last couple of years where, a couple of universities had ransomware attacks, and it often shut down the entire place because they couldn't access any of their databases. They couldn't afford to remediate the situation. And so the cybersecurity requirements, which are essential given all of the sensitive information that universities hold, are not necessarily easy ones for universities to reach. On that first executive order from April 23rd, you can see that there's an ambition to have higher education focus on the practical skills that they think that AI will require. I think that's a great start. And certainly universities should especially in STEM programs, business programs, the use of AI should be incorporated into the classroom. You see that if you're going to be an engineer in the future, right, you're going to be using AI every single day. If you're in finance, you'll be using AI every single day. But I think what the interesting thing might be for many of your listeners is, I think it is a clarion call kind of latent in that they actually reemphasize the humanities. Because going forward, right, the questions of what is a good life? What should we do? What is right? What should society look like? What is the covenant between a government and its citizenry? These are actually going to be called into question in ways that they haven't been for hundreds of years. And so that deep study of philosophy, literature, history, so it's going to be more important than it ever has been before as well. And we often forget that in our kind of tech-influenced worldview these days.
Amen to that. You don't know this about me, Brad, but I was actually a religious studies major in college at a liberal arts school. So I will always champion a liberal arts degree. And I co sign what you just said. I think the importance in learning how to think is only increasing in this world where we're now using AI as our agents and our co pilots to work alongside us. Because if we don't know how to think and analyze those outputs, then as individuals, we're going to succumb to the AI hallucinations or, the things that you see in the media where people start to complain about, the impact that AI is having. So I really appreciate your point around that. But I have to ask you, and maybe this is the contrarian in me or, the person who's like, oh, we need to pump the brakes sometimes. When I look at these executive orders, I am left with the question around, okay, is the government actually empowering our colleges with this, or are they just enlisting them, right? Because the executive orders use really strong language, like colleges must expand programs and must partner with industry for workforce development. But as we've both identified, these campuses are underfunded, understaffed, and still recovering from this COVID era shock, right? So if you were still leading Tulsa and going back this fall, right, like how would you be interpreting what Washington has been saying and seemingly mandating?
I think I would recognize that we have a lot of details still to be worked out, right? Both of those EAs call for other agencies of the government to form task forces to kind of come out with some more understanding of what they want universities to do. So I think I would understand first that there's a directional move from Washington, D.C. They want universities to be involved in AI and in workforce training. And so that's a mandate. What that actually means is a little unclear right now. So I wouldn't take anything, as gospel and start implementing it. But I would realize that what they're wanting from Washington, D.C. is what the broader society wants and what students are going to need, which is we have to embrace artificial intelligence. It's here, it's going to be transformative, and we can't have our head in the sand about it. And so, yes, we should be incorporating it into our programs. We should be partnering with local businesses, which we already do in very many other areas, right? Every university I know of partners with their local communities for economic development, for recruiting of the students to work. And so now AI is going to be a part of that. And AI should be a part of the broader curriculum. You shouldn't leave college without understanding how AI works fundamentally, some of the kind of socio-technical issues that surround it, the controversies of its use, how it's changing the world, and also perhaps like the technical aspects of it, right? Where you can, if not create AI yourself, you at least kind of understand how it works, which allows you to use it better in your daily life.
Okay, but let's just be real for a second. Most institutions are still debating ChatGPT policies in the classroom. So how can we prepare our campus leadership and especially our faculty when we have policymakers, really just describing higher ed as being central to AI readiness?
No, I think you're right. There is a movement in higher ed, especially in the humanities, that's trying to resist AI at all costs, right? Where I saw faculty at the University of Tulsa would often put in their syllabus, right? Any use of AI here is verboten, right? It will be a source, it will be considered cheating, and you'll be reported to the honor system. And I think we have to recognize that today, one of the best use cases for ChatGPT or other large language models is cheating in college, right? You should assume basically that every paper you assign that's worked on outside of class is going to be AI influenced. But this is also true in STEM. I have a son who's majoring in engineering. He has very difficult problem sets in physics or mathematics. The reasoning models today can solve those with very little effort. And so take home work, you have to recognize that there's going to be an AI tutor involved in this. And it could be far more than a tutor. The AI can just do the work for you. And so one has to be realistic about that, despite whatever prohibitions are in syllabi, and then change the way we do pedagogy, right? Use the AI to do a lot of the kind of grunt work of teaching, right? While you are focusing on being mentoring or focusing on the discussion aspects. So I think it's going to change pedagogy in a lot of ways, including in the humanities. And so what I saw is a division. Many of the STEM faculty are eager to incorporate AI. They realize it's going to be a key part of an engineer's work going forward. Math and physics will use AI in serious ways, and the fields seem to have embraced it. literature, history, sociology have not yet. But it has great applications there. It's going to change the way that teaching is done, the way assessments are done. But we have to realize that this is the world we're in now and adjust accordingly.
So let's talk about regulation and your nonprofit, which is working on bipartisan AI guardrails. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So America's Responsible Innovation was formed about a year and a half ago. And we're already the largest group in Washington, D.C. advocating for AI policy.
Amazing.
It's what we believe is this. AI is going to be a transformative technology. There are many incredible aspects of what it's going to do for society in drug discovery and the ability to do research more quickly, in automating a lot of the most tedious work we have around us. So AI has some very transformative possibilities. It also, though, has some possibly negative consequences for our society, and we should explore those and recognize if we don't address those, right, that maybe the beneficial parts will never be realized. Because, when you look at the polling data in this country, most Americans are suspicious or even hostile to artificial intelligence. And people's day-to-day encountering of artificial intelligence right now can often be negative, even if it is often also invisible to them. Recommender systems in your social media algorithms, the predictive AI that determines whether you'll get that loan or not, or whether you're eligible for a particular benefit. You may not even know AI is involved with that, but people are sketchy about it. And so if we don't have reasonable guardrails, these incredible opportunities that AI presents will not be realized because the public will have a backlash, especially as now people think AI might be coming for their job. And AI probably is coming for their job. And so if we're going to have AI used as a tool to augment human flourishing, as opposed to opposing human flourishing, right, reasonable guardrails around it are essential. And that's what we at ARI advocate for.
Well, the private sector, we know, just moves a whole lot faster than higher ed or government, right? So do you think that regulation can catch up to where AI is, which we know moves just faster than anything we've ever seen before, without slowing down innovation?
I think so. I think there are lots of cases throughout the history of technology where regulation actually sped up the adoption of technologies. I mean, you think of driving on the right side of the road. Once you have certain norms, right? Highways become usable because people understand that there are rules that allow one to feel that this technology of highways is used right and is safe and usable for them. Right? You can go down the list of things where reasonable regulation, transparency allows people to have faith in an industry, which speeds up its development. And so I don't think regulation and innovation are, in the case of AI at least, opposed to one another. In fact, I think they work hand in glove.
All right. Well, I guess we will tune in or maybe check back in with you in some number of months to see if that actually plays out that way. Brad, it was just really terrific having you on to talk about this and elevate this conversation. So my last question for you, if these executive orders represent the beginning of a federal operating model for AI, where do you see higher education fitting long term? Is it maybe on that workforce pipeline side, or do you see it as something more civic, like stewards of the public interest, or maybe it's both or something else?
I think it's all of those things. The historic mission of a university has been to keep learning alive and disseminate it generation to generation, discover new knowledge, and to teach that to students, and then to have a public impact, right, in what they're doing. So AI isn't going to change that fundamental mission. In fact, it may make it more important, because I think the question of what it means to be human is actually on the table for the first time, perhaps, in our species' history. What does it mean to be a human being? Machine intelligence brings that into question, and we're going to be debating it, and universities have to play a big role in answering that for us in the right way.
Well, Brad, that is the note that we will end on. Listeners, I look forward to seeing some of you this week at the Engage Summit in Charlotte, at least virtually if you are not there in person. Remember, you can still head over to enrollify.org/engage and register for the entire conference for free. There is literally no excuse to not get this really great AI learning that will build on the conversation Brad and I had today. Brad, thank you again. Any parting thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Well, it's an honor to be here. I think people with higher education need to realize their voice is essential if we're going to get AI to benefit us all. So please engage, learn what it's all about, and have your voice be amplified in every way possible.
Amazing. All right, folks, on that, we will close this one out. See you next week. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Pulse. The show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.